Okay, now coming back to the project implementation discussion, we discussed what we actually discussed in the previous lecture was one part of it. So coming back to that discussion again, the first phase that where a client will actually start with a consulting company is requirement gathering. Okay. Then comes the purchase of licenses, the compatibilities and non-compatibilities are checked. Blueprint is prepared, and blueprint means each and every process detail, information, data for every department, the process, the workflows are basically collected in a blueprint document. Then at the fifth stage, we have consultants who will write specifications like configuration notes, guidelines, T codes, navigation paths for the functional consultants. So requirement gathering basically is for mapping the requirements and for finding gaps and for writing specification documents for functional and technical consultants. So senior consultants have a different area to handle where they are basically directing the functional and technical consultants. Then starts the configuration where the functional objects, which is the configuration, then comes the technical objects, which is coming from ABAP and from the database. Okay. So functional configuration is stored in a different package and technical objects are stored in a different package. Now, what are packages? We'll discuss that in the system. Okay. And speaking of transporting the packages, once it is configured, tested, approved, it moves to the other server or client as it is called in SAP. There are testing teams, and along with testing teams, there are teams for making authorizations. Authorizations are that some T codes, transaction codes will be allowed to the users and some will not be allowed to some users. There will be some super users, there will be management users, there will be end users. So broadly, these are the authorizations that will happen for every department, for every nook and corner of the company. The analysis test and the scripts will be a part of the UAT, that is user acceptance testing. Once that is through and smooth, and when issues are addressed, the uploads actually start and the production server or the production client is made ready and it is transported to the PRD or the production server finally. Okay. And then comes, of course, the support programs after the go live, where the issues, add-ons, rollouts are basically looked after. With version upgrade, of course, licensing is renewed, pricing can be different. Now, this is how SAP projects are basically implemented. It's pretty much straightforward, no rocket science. It's not a complex process. All you have to be is a good process collector, requirement collector, and investigator. And you should know how to handle document management when it comes to investigating process for a company. Speaking of our architecture, there are database layers, application layers, and presentation layers. These are three layers in SAP. The application layer is where we actually have the functional modules. Now, speaking of SAP as an ERP, earlier model or version was ECC, or it was also called R3, which is the R3 architecture, which is real-time three-tier architecture, which is database layers, application, and presentation layer. Presentation layer is the screens that we see. The application layer, where all the configuration is basically stored or housed. Now, after SAP S/4HANA, the architecture has been upgraded. Okay. Now, if you look at the implementation side, the implementation guide. For HCM, we have time management module, the payroll module, and for HCM module, we have training and development, personal administration as well. Okay. Now, speaking of the HCM modules, now these are very big projects for HCM because multinational companies have larger workforce, and of course, that has to be managed through different jurisdictions of payroll because every country will have its own set of labor laws, workforce laws, and those laws are supported by SAP. If we look at the end user part of SAP for HCM, it is accessible by functional consultants. Okay. Now let's have a look at PA30 where we can actually maintain the master data. We've already seen that, I believe, in the previous lecture. So let's move ahead because this has SAP front-end activity as well ahead in the presentation. Okay. So SAP R3 is the ERP system only. CRM is not part of the ERP. CRM is not ERP. APO, Advanced Planning Optimizer, is also not part of the ERP. SAP BI, if we look at the other product, that is business intelligence, where we analyze, compile, and generate data from various modules. It basically works with a database. If we talk about the family, again, it's a big family. We have R3 system, which is again functional modules. Then we have CRM, supplier relationship management, APO, supplier chain management, supply chain management. Then we have solution manager, master data manager, which is MDM. The R3 family is this family. Okay, the CRM is basically a different avenue, a different product. Okay. Now, and speaking of R3, of course, the functional technical modules are basically residing in R3 architecture. Starting with lecture 4, we've already done with lecture number 2. This is lecture 4. Lecture 3 comes after this. Now let's go and check the system. Okay. Organizational plan, expert mode, info systems, tools, and settings. Let's have a look at it. Human resources and organizational management. Organizational management. Then we have organizational plan, staffing, PPCOE, change. We'll look at the expert mode. We'll just actually run through these transactions right now because by the 5th and 6th lecture, of course, we'll be going into the configuration, into the comprehensive part of this architecture. Okay. Now, for example, if we look at this and this part, we have a unit. Okay. And we have positions, we have jobs. Now, job is a job description. Position is a real position which is held by a person. A person is a real person. Okay. Now, if you look at Huawei, it is a company and it has 3 departments: HR, finance, sales. Of course, it will have more in real life, but we actually keep it a little scant right now, a little leaner, so it's easier for our understanding. And in HR department, we have a manager and we have an executive. Okay, a manager finance and executive finance. All right. Same goes for the sales department. Next is expert mode info systems. Okay. Export mode, organizational units. We create organizational units. We've already seen that in the previous lecture. We create positions, work center. Now, work center basically work hand in hand with the cost center in finance. Okay. Expert mode, info system. Now, info system is basically reports about each and every part of your HCM submodules like organizational management, training needs. Every part will have its own set of reporting tools. Okay. Speaking of organizational management, info system, then we have tools. Tools is basically, if we talk about um, versions, now every version will have a real version for our company, Cortex. Okay. Since this is a place server or a practice server, we will have multiple versions. We'll see how it actually works. Next comes in PO10 expert mode, PO10. Now, PO10 is basically maintaining the organizational unit. Okay. Organizational unit, for example, if we have one, for example, we were looking at Huawei, right? Huawei. Okay, HR department, finance department, for example. Enter. We have two parts that are maintained. We'll go for relationships. We'll change the info type. Okay. And we have, it reports to the related object. Now, what is the related object? That is 275. That is the company. Directly, it is reporting. It is a main part of the company. Okay. Okay. PO03. Let's go back. Okay. Organizational management, staffing, expert mode, PO10. We've already seen that job. We can create jobs from here and jobs will be different. Okay. Change input type, object. Okay. Let's pick up a present job that we have actually configured. It's taking a little bit of time. PO01, work catalog, general. Okay, generalized. Now, I've already told you what are plan versions. Now, this is an important concept. You actually create your own versions. And since this is a practice server, every customer that we actually create will have its own version. So when you're actually working with a consulting company for a customer, the versions that we will have for every customer will be dedicatedly, exclusively for that customer. Let's search for that and let's go ahead. Now, info types. Now, info types are the heart and soul of the entire SAP HCM. Without info type, we cannot actually work and execute the HCM module. Complete HCM is basically a combination of all the info types and basically supervises and functions along with the objects and relationships. Okay. So when we are actually creating a customer, for example, like Walmart or Huawei, whatever, okay, we've already seen the relationships that actually go into defining the departments, the various departments. Speaking of job, so what is a job? Job is basically a description, for example. Let's say Domino's, HR executives. Okay, this is created, change info type. Now, over here, the job is basically created and with a job actually comes the job description that you will actually define for that job. Now, a job basically explains or details or describes what a position has to accomplish. A position is basically occupied by a person, but a job basically defines and describes a position. Okay, like position. Okay, and positions basically are occupied by people. Coming to this transaction PPOM old, let's go to that PPOM old. Organizational unit, we'll just pick any organizational unit. Let's say Walmart. Okay. 01 2020 2023. Okay, basic data and overall view. Enter. Okay. Now in Walmart, we have HR department, we have finance department, and we have like 3 people working in this company. It's already this hat basically is basically showing that this person is a chief in this department, or the boss of that department, or the manager, senior manager of this department. And basically it actually shows who is going to report to whom. Okay, now this is basically again some parts of the SAP family again, and this is lecture 3. Lecture 4 is also done. Speaking of business warehouse, this is another layer of SAP products that we have for analytics and information systems, where of course all the data is collected at a business warehouse, and it's coming from various sources and modules. In SAP, it's the BIW, the business warehouse and business intelligence module that actually sits on top of the entire ERP, and it gets data through the process of extraction, transformation, and loading. Okay. So business information warehouse, now big data is basically the new thing, the new business in today's digital domain. And it's a big dimension. Big data, of course, is the currency, is the new black gold. So that's why companies like SAP and other big companies are heavily invested into analytics. Okay. SAP EP, this is Enterprise Portal, is another part, another product of SAP. Okay. Speaking of other products, we have Exchange interface, which is XI. PI is process integration. Again, this is for machine integration. MDM is master data management for all the modules. All the master data is basically aligned, synchronized under this MDM, and there are jobs in the market for MDM. Solution manager is basically where you can actually manage workflows of the entire SAP ERP as a project manager. You can control the configuration of SAP through Solution Manager. It's a very powerful product. It's a free product. It's a very powerful product. All your configuration is basically interpreted and viewable or usable through Solution Manager. Now, speaking of, again, these are some of the products like BPC, this for consolidation. The consolidation is part of financial accounting. Okay, PLM is project lifecycle management. Speaking of SAP, the architecture, we have had a detailed discussion on all this. Okay, and as a customer or as a consulting company, both, the system landscape is of prime and fundamental vital importance, since because the landscape has to be maintained and managed expertly, because all these landscape, the development, the QA, PRD will keep working and functioning as long as the business is continuing. So now that we have a fair understanding of the architecture, the implementation methods, methodologies, and phases, what we are going to cover in HCM is organizational management, personnel administration, time management, payroll, and benefits. Okay, 5 to 6 modules will be covered. Okay, thank you.